talk a lot about how the avoidant partner must manipulate people because they get involved and they sound so connected and so available, and all of a sudden they back out, right? Look at this manipulation. The flip side to that is the avoidant partner often feels manipulated because their behavior is thrown back at them in a way that mischaracterizes what their true intentions are. When the anxiously attached tries to protect themselves, they reach for somebody. They protect me from feeling abandonment, because that's the thing I'm most afraid of, so I reach for you. When the avoidant person tries to save themselves, they reach for solitude, because you're not trustworthy. You're going to make this about you, so I have to go protect myself. I don't regulate around people because your needs become primary. So for me to be in connection with my needs, I have to go be alone. But so for me to feel safe, you end up feeling avoidant hears something that even has like a whisper of criticism. You know, it's not even meant to be criticism, but it has like just an outline of criticism, and they are trying to keep themselves from feeling either, most of it's shame. I'm just going to hear I'm the problem. Once again, I'm the problem. If I grew up in a home where my parents oftentimes ignored me or neglected or didn't pay a lot of attention to me, but they definitely paid attention when I screwed something up. And that's why I've had these walls. Because look, you only really care about me or show me, parental guidance when you're trying to fix me. Well, now I'm in a relationship where once again you're trying to fix me. So of course I'm going to, instead of showing you a sense of remorse on my face and understanding and empathy for what you're going through, I'm not going to give you that. Because if I give you that, if I validate you, I'm giving you agreement.
Nudge, thank you so much for joining me. It is always a pleasure, always exciting to know that you're going to be on my podcast. I love having our discussions. Today I want to do something a little different because a lot of people have enjoyed our conversations together. They're generally discussions. But here I want to know a little bit more about you so that our viewers can connect more. So tell us a little bit about you, the work that you do, and what drives you.
Well, thank you for having me on again. The work that I do is psychotherapy and coaching. A lot of that's rooted in attachment, a lot of that's rooted in relationships and helping people find and keep the relationships that they want. What motivates me and drives me is just the work that I see healing people. I think it's a bit of a privilege and a gift to be able to be a part of this stage in someone's journey where they are gaining awareness that they're part of the problem, that they can't blame everyone else for how they feel, and that there's something here that needs healing, and you get to be a part of that healing. It's my life's work at this point. I've devoted blood, sweat, and tears to the program I put together, and I think the clients that have been with me for either weeks, months, or years, I think see the dedication I have to this work.
Great. Thanks for sharing. What is this program? It is based on attachment theory. And what was the defining moment in your life that made you realize this is the thing that you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Well, the program is rooted in regaining a sense of internal security. So the idea is that as children, we have this secure base provided to us from our parents. And the summary of that is we need parents who are creating a safe sense of safety, who are able to soothe us and help us feel soothing, safe, and what's the third one? Soothing, safe, and wow, I'm drawing a blank. Hold on, we're going to cut that part. Oh, no. Oh, thank you. As children, we needed parents who helped us feel soothing, safety, and seen. And to the degree that we were able to get that from them, we have that internally. And so you recognize a secure person because of their ability to be in a relationship and not need all of that from someone else. Of course, they need some of that from someone else, but they don't need you to fix that or fill that within them because they can do it for themselves. And they are able to do it for themselves because their family of origin provided that secure base. Mm-hmm. So what we find over and over again is someone will enter into a relationship and feel really let down, feel dysregulated easily, feel not seen. As soon as that person misses the mark, they're just falling apart, or they're just never feeling like what that person gives them is enough. Right? There's a lack of safety, and that haunts them. It follows them in every relationship, and they're starting to realize, oh, maybe there's something within me that needs to be repaired here, because I keep wanting this from people, and people keep not being able to give it to me. And I've worked with people who are, have a lot of awareness that are in their 20s. And then there's people who finally it clicks at, in their 60s. I was in this relationship for either people who are divorced now in their later age and realized they've never been in a good relationship. And that last relationship that lasted 40 years was actually terrible. They want something different, but they know that they have this inability to connect at that level. And so probably, back to your question, it was maybe a year and a half ago when I started doing my own avoidance, fearful avoidant work. Maybe 2 years ago now, maybe a little more. And I think about it, time is flying by. Within my own relationship, where my own therapist said to me, "Hey, you can be a bit slippery," and my partner is like, "Yeah, you can be hard to nail down." And I hear this from my avoidant clients as well. Like, yeah, my friends are always telling me that I'm the last person to sign up, on the vacation or whatever. And it sort of clicked for me that I kind of make sure that our relationships are on my terms. And I've been doing that for a long time by always sort of keeping one foot out the door. But now I'm with this person who I don't want to lose. And my therapist, right, the person who I'm supposed to be having the most secure relationship with, the most safe, I'm even keeping them at arm's length. And that's when it really started to click for me that I had work to do. I had to figure out how to let people in and really connect and attach, to create a sense of safety here so that I could go and be more vulnerable in my relationships.
What was it your therapist said it, and that's when there was that wake up. What was it about the therapist? Because we both know that we've heard these things in the past from other people of the past. An ex might have said it, a friend might have said it, but it never really clicked. What was it about the therapist saying it that made you realize, okay, now it's time to do the work?
That's a great question. I think that I was getting it from my partner already. And then to have the therapist reinforce that. And I'm like, okay, these are the two relationships in my life that are supposed to be, again, the safest. These are the two people where I have signed up for a level of vulnerability in both of these spaces. So when I'm at my most vulnerable, the feedback I'm getting from these two people is, you're a little hard to nail down. Okay, that's clearly I'm the common denominator here. Clearly this is about me. Now, my relationship has its dynamic, so it's not only me there. But with the therapist, that's different. That's only me. He's there. He's present. He's showing up. As long as I show up, he's going to show up. And so that's when I knew this was definitely me. I couldn't blame that. I couldn't on a dynamic. That was just the way I did or did not show up.
Now, what happens a lot is that partners will bring up these issues with the fearful avoidant. They'll say, these are the areas that I feel like you could improve on. Mm-hmm. And they often report, you might have heard this too, it's like talking to a wall. What happens? What happens there? What happens in the fearful avoidant or a dismissive avoidance mind when the partner is trying to highlight these problems in the relationship? They're just unwilling to hear it?
Yeah. Oh, no. They're hearing it. So of course, there are some people whose defenses are so high that it just bounces right off. Right? That's the person that, even though I wouldn't call them a narcissist, are going to feel narcissistic because everything bounces off, right? Because they are trying to save themselves from the shame spiral that will happen if they let any criticism in. That being said, the other side of that is, of course, most people, anxious attachers, just people in general, oftentimes when they're in a relationship, have a tendency to express dissatisfaction in a way that sounds a lot like criticism. And so they're like, look, I'm just giving you feedback. But that feedback is said in a way that says, you do this thing, which anyone's going to feel like. You have to be in a very well-regulated, secure, like strong ego space to hear someone give you feedback in a tactless manner. So the avoidant hears something that even has like a whisper of criticism. It's not even meant to be criticism, but it has like just the outline of criticism, and they are trying to keep themselves from feeling either, most of it's shame. That's my assumption. Most of the time it's shame. Because if you're telling me this relationship has problems, and you're telling me here's my role in it, without saying, well, here's my role in it first, I'm just going to hear I'm the problem. Once again, I'm the problem. If I grew up in a home where my parents oftentimes ignored me or neglected or didn't pay a lot of attention to me, but they definitely paid attention when I screwed something up. And, that's why I've had these walls. Because, look, you only really care about me or show me, parental guidance when you're trying to fix me. Well, now I'm in a relationship where, once again, you're trying to fix me. So, of course, I'm going to, instead of showing you a sense of remorse on my face and understanding and empathy for what you're going through, I'm not going to give you that. Because if I give you that, if I validate you, I'm giving you agreement. And if I agree with you, you're going to hold that over my head forever. And so I run into this problem with avoidance in my individual work so often, where I know that what's keeping the relationship stuck, in part, is their inability or lack of desire around validation. They just don't want to validate their partner because they see that as agreement.
Mm-hmm. And there is that vulnerability, right? That to be exposed, to say, yes, I am wrong, I hurt you. And now the next time we get into a fight, it's going to be, oh, well, remember that time you did admit that you were wrong. You did admit to knowing.
Right.
Is that also seen as a form of manipulation? That kind of language.
Yeah, I mean, that is the other side of the coin, and that's what isn't talked about in social media a lot. Is that we talk a lot about how the avoidant partner must manipulate people because they get involved and they sound so connected and so available, and all of a sudden they back out. Right? Look at this manipulation. The flip side to that is the avoidant partner often feels manipulated because their behavior is thrown back at them in a way that mischaracterizes what their true intentions are. And so if I go out of my way to validate you today, and then later you say, well, look, you must be doing this again to me. I'm like, first of all, I didn't say I did it in the first place. I was just validating you. I was just telling you I understand. But now you're telling me that I'm doing it again to you, but I didn't do it in the first place. This was always a misrepresentation of how I felt and what my true intentions were. A good couples therapist will piece that apart and say, here is the difference between his intention or her intention and the impact it had on you. Mm-hmm. And that one piece of knowledge, right? The intention versus the impact can really save a relationship, because I think the narrative is always going to be, especially for the anxious side, is that this is a thing you sort of did on purpose. You must have known this was going to feel this way to me. You must have known this was going to hurt. And if you didn't think about it, then you're inconsiderate, at least. And if you did it on purpose, well, then you're an a-hole. And those are my narratives, and those are my only two explanations, when in reality, the avoidant has neither one of those intentions. They're just maybe like not great at being, thinking about how this might impact you. Like, you disappeared for 5 hours. Well, how do you think that was going to make me feel? I didn't think about it at all. Why would you care? I wouldn't care. You didn't think about it at all? That's even worse. So it's like this, the intention and impact gets really missed a lot.
Well, there's a lot of projection, right? We tend to do that as humans. What I feel, I just imagine that everyone in the world will feel the same way and act the same way. And I see that in my practice as well, where, people are coming in and they're like, but if it were me, I would not have acted this way.
Yes.
there's a difference in brain. Now, I want to get to how you've been able to work through those feelings of shame. But before we do that, can you break down how the attachment styles are formed so that we could move forward for those who don't quite understand it? And also, if you can touch on how easy is it to change an attachment style? Because what a lot of people tend to believe is that this is just a thing that can be changed. Oh, they could just go to healing and get it all worked out. Or I often hear, I used to be a secure attached and then I became anxious attached because of the fearful avoidant. So help us understand that, please.
Those are big questions. And I think that I'm always sort of shifting on, the attachment origin story of a given person. I think it's, to me, so right now, my current viewpoint is there's a strong biological, it starts with our biology. I think that some people are just predisposed to being slightly more relational and needing closeness in a way that feels that we now characterize as more anxiously attached. And some people need independence in a way that we might sort of talk now about being more avoidant. But without a layer of trauma, those people are inherently secure, just lean outwards in those ways. Then there's the person who's naturally more going to have just this balance of independence and dependence in a way that's very, very functional. And the way it's been described evolutionarily is, of course, you need people who are more relationally centered. People who are actually maybe preoccupied just a little bit on the health and wellness of all the relationships in their tribe. And of course, you need people who care a lot less about that, who are independent and want to explore and find independence a core part of their personality, right? But again, in the context of a well-functioning group of people without trauma, those things are not as dysfunctional. But then you add a layer of, say, neglect, which I think will impact those people differently. Inconsistent parenting. So the more anxious style, anxious attachers are likely to have an inconsistent parent. Someone who maybe showed up sometimes, didn't show up. You didn't really know how they were going to react to you. And there was probably some abandonment in those moments. So they were disappearing on you, and then they'd show up full of love. Your version of love is now really weird and messed up because of this inconsistency and abandonment versus the more avoidant person who probably just suffered quite a bit of emotional or physical neglect. And so they've put up a lot of walls because they believe they have to take care of themselves. No one is going to come and take care of them. And this come to me, and again, this is going to get maybe into sticky territory. I believe that starts, now that I have a 6-month-old, I think it starts really early. I think it starts incredibly early because I have a child who needs physical contact. And not all children want to contact nap. Not all children want to be on their parent's chest. And some people are like, well, you need to break that. And I'm like, sorry, this is what I do for work. You're not telling me I need to break contact with my child and that's better for them. The neuroscience doesn't support that. But also my experience with healing adults doesn't support that. I'm going to be there physically for my child until he learns that he is secure and that he doesn't need me. That's the road to independence. So I think that what I'm noticing, and this is again in the literature, that avoidant children, I think that starts really, really early. So I think, imagine though, if you lean a little avoidant and then you have a parent that's a little neglectful, it's going to push that further. But if you lean more anxious and you really need a parent, you really need connection to feel good, and then you have neglect, it's almost, I think you have a deeper trauma there. I think you have someone who's hurt a lot more by the neglect. And so that to me is the origins. And then if you have someone who's both, or two parents who are doing both, one that's very neglectful, one that's in and out, of course, then you start getting that disorganized attachment or fearful avoidant. And you see that as a child grows, you can spot a disorganized child because they let in the wrong people. They're the kind of kids with the misfit group of friends, none of whom care about each other, probably bullying each other while still being best friends. They just don't understand what it feels like to have a healthy, strong group of people that care about each other.
Well, also, they don't know how to set the boundaries. So even though it may not feel good being in those groups,
Yep.
they don't know how to say, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to
Yep.
step aside, because there's the people pleasing that comes into it. And there's just so many nuances to this.
Hmm.
Now, tell me what you think of this. I was thinking about children as well, and where the attachment styles formed. And I've noticed it in my own children. I noticed it with my son when, as he was growing, started to spot when the anxiousness happened, the avoidance started to happen. What I thought about was the parent, and I was that parent who chose to stay at home with my last child I wanted to, for more than 5 years. And I thought of the child who sees the parent leaving for long hours, whether it's physically or emotionally unavailable for long hours, can start to realize that, okay, if I don't take care of myself, my own needs,
Yeah.
soothe my emotions,
Yeah.
my reactions, then I can't protect myself. This pain is just going to keep coming in, right? My parent is just going to keep leaving, and I'm left with this pain. So I've got to figure out how I'm going to deal with these emotions.
Yep.
And then there's the other child. Parent goes away, physically or emotionally. The parent comes back, and that child chooses to hang on to that parent and say, I am not going to let you go, because if I do, you're going to be gone, and I don't know when I'll see you
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But then there's the secure attached child who is, and of course, the first one would be the avoidant, grows up to be more of an avoidant attached style person, and the other one, the anxious, the one that grabs on. Now, the secure attached person or child would be, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, would be the one who says, all right, my parent leaves for a short period of time and then comes back. They leave and they come back. And so I'm used to that. It's okay. I could take care of myself. I could regulate. I don't have to be scared. I don't have to be worried. I
Sure.
feel loved, and I'm comfortable being by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the big question is, how did they become secure enough to have that understanding? You're right. And it's not intellectual, it's something that's felt at that point. So how did they get there? And my guess is it's because the parent needed to go because they have to work or do whatever, but they did so at a time when that child already had a foundation with them of security. So that when they left, although it wasn't easy on the kid, it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't traumatizing to be abandoned or left. Man, they had whatever tools to self-soothe at that point that were enough, because the avoidant is left at a time when they have no tools. The only tool now is to shut down. So they do. But the secure child is, again, we live in a modern world. Parents are leaving their children at daycare. It happens. And you know that you've maybe left that kid too early at daycare when you get back to them and they don't want you to soothe them. And you got
Now,
to
it's
push them up and push away. Yeah, go ahead.
just to say that whoever's looking or listening to this, we're not attacking you for your parenting. We're helping everyone understand how the attachment styles are formed. We understand life happens. Naj and I are both parents who are working. Naj, I'm sure you're with me. We are going to mess up. We're going to try not to, but we will.
Yeah.
But we're trying to understand where the attachment style is formed,
Yeah.
so that we could know that the adult you're dating, the adult you're married to, it's
Yeah.
not, they didn't wake up in their 20s and decided, I'm going to be this person. And it's not that easy to change. Yes, we could work on it, which is something I want us to get into here. But
And,
it's just to understand how it was all created, so that we could
yeah.
build some empathy.
And these are broad generalizations. My brother and my mother and I were talking about this the other day. She was watching some of my content and she says, I was with you till you were like 3. And at your brother, I dropped off at daycare at 3 months old because I had to go back to work. And between the two of us, he's had the more healthy relationships. He has his different challenges than I do, but it's not like he's not avoidant in the slightest. And he was dropped off early. He's a super secure person. He's very successful. He hasn't had any relational challenges throughout his life. So, somewhere along the road, even though he had to go to daycare early, we were able to make up for that. in the time that we did have with him. And I think that's the important part that's often missed, is it's not like you have to be a perfect parent. It's when you show up, are you actually showing up? And it's not about physical presence. Yes, of course it is about some physical presence, but it's like, are you passing on the tools to help them regulate and feel secure when you do get that time with them? Because a parent can go to work and then say, I spend 3 to 4 hours at most with my child, I'm worried. And I'm like, I tell them, I don't know that you need to be. I would look at their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if their behavior looks functional, if they look healthy, then whatever time you're spending with them is working.
And that brings me to the question of normal. We often get that an avoidance behavior is not normal, which is not something that I subscribe to. I believe that a person's normal is a thing that they use to cope so that they could survive. Can you elaborate on what your idea of normal is?
Yeah, it's so sad to me, actually, because they just had a comment on one of my videos, and a young woman says, I want so badly to have a relationship. But every time I get close to somebody, I run off because I imagine they're going to abandon me, or they're going to reject me, or they're going to hurt me first. So I do it first. And because they're leaving somebody in that process, she will be considered the bad guy. She is not normal, because normal is to cling and hope and fight for a relationship. And my pushback on this throughout all my videos was, wanting someone who's not showing up for you is also not healthy or normal. You not having boundaries and abandoning yourself to get a little bit of connection is not healthy. And to some degree, I don't know, maybe the avoidant is doing both of you a favor, because this relationship is not working and it's toxic, and they have the courage to leave, and you're just hurt, so you're going on social media complaining about how they're all the bad guy. But it doesn't sound like you were in a good relationship to begin with, so I don't know what you're complaining about. People don't like that. And I think normal in the world of insecure attachment, unfortunately, normal is dysregulation.
Well, I mean, how am I going to feel if I'm saying, Nudge, I'm upset with you because you're not giving me the thing that's going to make me happy? Because that's what for those who've been listening, and you know this, I come from an anxious attachment style. And when I look at my past, I don't think our attachment feels, or the anxious attached person feels shame, but you can have enough awareness to feel empathy and regret to some degree. And now looking back at past relationships, it's just so incredibly sad how arrogant and selfish I was. And not looking at, I didn't know, so I could forgive myself for that, but not knowing that I was hoping that person could break apart who they were to do the thing that would make me happy. I didn't see it as selfish. I just saw that I was fixed. I was reading all the self-help books. Mm-hmm. So, I was the fixed one, and they needed to do the work. Now, we talked about the avoidant attached feeling shame, and I'm going to guess that there is also shame when someone of an avoidant attachment style says, you know what, I'm afraid that this person is going to leave me, so I'm going to leave first, but I know this is not what I promised.
Yeah.
This is not in keeping with my word.
Yeah.
And then they make the move to leave, and they're told that you're a horrible person, you betrayed me, you gaslit me, you breadcrumbed me, and you blindsided me, and you discarded me.
Yeah.
I'm guessing from all of that, you would have feelings of shame as well.
Yeah, shame and anger, because you're probably being mischaracterized. When the anxious person tries to when the anxiously attached tries to protect themselves, they reach for somebody. They protect me from feeling abandonment, because that's the thing I'm most afraid of, so I reach for you. When the avoidant person tries to save themselves, they reach for solitude. because you're not trustworthy. You're going to make this about you. So I have to go protect myself. I don't regulate around people because your needs become primary. So for me to be in connection with my needs, I have to go be alone. But so for me to feel safe, you end up feeling abandoned. So this is not a win. This is such a lose-lose situation for the avoidant. And it's so hard, I think, for people to understand, again, back to normal. If you believe normal is connection and only connection, then everything that feels right to me, not everything, but what feels right to me in a moment of conflict, to you is wrong, is bad, is dysfunctional. When a couple starts to realize that the avoidant just needs a few minutes, maybe half a day, whatever, just needs their time so that they can come back and be the partner you need, and you let them have that. And that time starts to shrink over time because they need less and less of it as the relationship becomes safer. If you can do that with somebody, you'll get the partner you want. You'll get all the good stuff and none of the bad eventually, but you have to tolerate them learning how to find safety in the relationship by isolating first. If you can't tolerate that, this is not the right person for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that feeling of shame?
I have an interesting way of dealing with difficult emotions, which is to go directly at them. It's part of my program too. It's sort of a psychodynamic approach where you sit with feelings and you just get into it. Like when I have a headache, I don't take an Advil. I try to find the center of the headache, and I'm like, is this a muscle problem? And I go to it, and if it's a muscle problem, I think, all right, I'm just going to go to that muscle and be with it. And I know that sounds bananas, but it comes from years of meditation as well. And so I did that. I just got into the shame and went, wow, I've done so much work to avoid this feeling. It permeates my entire life. I couldn't do content. I couldn't put out my writing. I can't be vulnerable with my partner. I back away from relationships, all so that I can avoid shame.
Can you give me an example? Help me understand this.
Yeah, so you believe that you as a partner are very generous. And so on your partner's birthday one year, you give them flowers and you do this gesture, you go to a restaurant and you think, wow, what a great partner I am. I'm so generous. And then the next year, your partner's like, last year you gave me flowers and you took me to dinner. That's not really going to cut it. I mean, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm so generous. I'm a generous person. Yeah, this is like my 30th birthday or whatever. I want a lot more than that. And you're like, whoa. But I planned this dinner and I was going to get you flowers. I'm a very generous person. Yeah, I don't know that counts as generous. Not to me. Generous is like, you plan a vacation. You take me out. You do something that says you recognize what a big occasion this is for me. I think what you're doing is calling yourself generous while doing feels like very, very little. I'm not complaining, thank you, but I don't think you get to wear the hat of a generous person while doing essentially what is a date night on a very big birthday for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that moment, I have some options. I can say, you're selfish. You want way too much. You are self-centered and don't understand what you're doing to me. You're taking me for granted. Or I can go, oh, wow, I just planned a date night on your 30th birthday. That's not enough. I hear you. Now, truth be told, this is sort of a very real situation. Some of the details are a little different, but I would be totally fine with a date night on my 30th birthday. I just don't care. My partner, on the other hand, is like, I'm turning 30. I want a week, if not more, of celebrations, and I want you to be a part of almost all of them, and that is how her whole family lives. But if I don't choose to, number one, be curious about what she wants, so I don't ask her to begin with, problem number one. Number two, I don't follow through on any of those things. And number three, I act burdened and put upon for all the things she wants. Then I'm like, but I'm so generous. I planned a dinner, right? I'm clearly not generous, but due to the shame I feel when I have let my partner down and not come through for them and not met their need here, instead of dealing with that, I push that out and I say, no, you want way too much. And this, that you want too much can be said at any time, at any moment, emotionally. Oh, look, you're sad because you had a hard day and you want me to soothe you. You know, you really want too much. I've also had a hard day. It can be said at any time because I don't want to deal with the shame of not coming through as a partner, not meeting my partner's needs. I can easily and say, well, you want too much. So I had to do a pretty robust inventory of some of these things in which I had these self beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
generous. I show up. I do this. I do that. I'm this person. And in the context of a relationship, if she would feel let down, we talk about it. And she'd have to own some part of it. Like, okay, that maybe was an unreasonable expectation, and I have to own some other part of it. Yeah, okay. No, in reality, you should get that. If I'm being generous and loving, you should definitely get that. I'm not being generous in this moment. And that, again, was very hard for me because I thought I was generous. So, I mean, that's a very long-winded way of saying that, you have, it's shame is about believing internally that there's something wrong with you. But if I'm very defended against shame, then nothing can be wrong with me. And
And like you mentioned earlier, this comes from that feeling in childhood where it's like you only recognized me or noticed me or gave me any validation or affection and attention when I did something that you liked. And now that I'm doing something that you don't like, it means I've done something wrong.
yes,
I'm
there's
not
something wrong
perfect.
with me.
I'm not good enough.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you so much. So this is something I'm going to research, and maybe you already know about this. Is shame something that anxious attached people feel?
I think everyone feels shame. I mean, shame is, from an evolutionary standpoint, a core emotion, and you can't get away from it. It's very important for us as a society to have and feel shame. Like not, it's
Maybe I'll get to it.
yeah,
I've been trying to understand that feeling for a long time.
yeah.
Resentment. Yeah, it's also a feeling that I only recently felt.
Mm,
It's a strange, strange thing. It only started happening maybe about a year ago. And I think I shared with you that after, healing from the anxious attached and trying to become more securely attached, I flipped into a fearful avoidant. And
mm,
in that fearful avoidant, I started to notice those feelings of resentment,
mm, right.
fear of
Yeah.
being vulnerable, of getting too close to people. And
Mhm.
so shame is still on the list to come up. I hope it doesn't. I hope with your explanation, I'll be good.
Yeah, I like your. I really appreciate your distinction. As an anxious person, didn't feel resentment. That's such. There is no room for resentment when you have anxiety, right? I can't resent you because that means I have to set boundaries and push you away if you don't meet them. So I never resent you for anything. I just let it happen and I accept it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I never thought about that.
And
Um,
now that I have boundaries,
oh, yeah.
what I find is, and we could talk about this in another interview, but they say the dark energy is really your boundaries when you're setting your boundaries, and light energy is more, or I don't know if I'm the one saying it. When we embrace empathy, that's the way I like to see it. Light
Mm,
energy, empathy; dark energy, boundaries, and you
mm,
need the two to go. And for a long time, I suppressed that dark energy, the boundary, the part of me that says, no, it's not okay for you to do this to me.
yeah. Yeah.
Since I
I do.
started to do,
I like that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it culturally.
Hmm.
Like there are certain cultures that you're not really supposed to set boundaries, but you're also not supposed to engage with like dark energies of the world, and that's think it's yeah, that checks out for me. I really like that.
Yeah, so that's what I started to do. So what I find now is that there's certain situations where you just have to suck it up And I could now feel that that energy locked inside of me because I'm unable to set those boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, shortly after, the feeling of resentment comes up. And on top of that, there's the self-guilt because I'm not setting the boundaries. I did something that caused myself pain.
Yeah.
And of course, a whole spew of other things happen. Like I start to get upset. I can't handle the energies around me, or I'm afraid of what I might say that affects the other people around me just because everything is so bottled up,
Yeah.
which that fearful avoidant that still tries to trickle into me helps me understand that the fearful avoidant in you probably would have felt that keeping all of those emotions locked in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Uh, your access to the resentment is such a beautiful signal that you have something important that you need to be talking about. And you didn't feel safe to do so, so you didn't, but now you're angry that this person is walking all over a boundary that you need to set. And maybe, and maybe you didn't. And it's most people from there. Not I don't want to say most, but a lot of people from there get very passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think in like it's happened recently where I was, because of the situation, again because of timing, and you've got to take so many things into consideration, I could not speak up, and I could tell how it was affecting me. I cried a lot because that's how my body releases that stress, and I was okay. It's not a cry of, oh, why me, or I need to get this fixed. It wasn't anything. It was just my body releasing that stress. So I cried a lot. But I also knew that the matter had to be addressed at some point. And so it was more collecting the information, sitting with those feelings, like you did, right, with shame, sitting with that discomfort and saying, okay, when I do have the opportunity to discuss this and process all of this, how am I going to set boundaries in the future so that this does not happen again? And generally it happens with people, right? It's people we need to set the boundaries with. So sometimes in that moment, you can't quite set your boundaries, but you can figure it out, like process the information. How do I do this in the future so it doesn't keep happening? Because, we have important relationships that we want to preserve. And so that's important. So yes, shame is not one that I could quite pinpoint right now, but resentment is.
Okay. Well, for anyone who wants to do deeper work around any intense feeling, core emotion, anger, loss and sadness, or shame, the way that I work with it typically is to think about it a little like a person. What is my relationship to this feeling? When it comes up, what do I do to it? Do I push it down? And do I notice it and sort of set it aside? Do I just watch it float by like a cloud? What do I do in response to it? That will tell us a lot about your defense mechanism here. If, I never feel shame, which honestly is impossible to imagine. At least it's like...
Actually, no. You're right. I just picked up on one.
Okay.
I just picked up on one. Yeah, I'll share.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
No, I did.
So if you notice, so in the moment it comes up, and if you can, again, right when it comes up, what do I do? And it might be, for a lot of people who are deeply defended against feeling it might be something that happens so fast and so automatic that defense might be so strong, you don't even notice it happens. You move right through it. I have a friend who never feels shame, but I can watch it, the glimpse on her face, the way she goes boop and kicks it out. Part of it is because she doesn't find it useful because we're in the context of close friends. But some of it is, I wonder for other people, could the feeling of shame be important for you because it's guiding your behavior? But if you never let it in and doesn't ever guide your behavior at all, chances are you're going to lose relationships and friendships because people need you to correct behavior, to do something a little more socially appropriate.
All right. I think now I know what it is. So is it possible that anxious attached can misinterpret shame or mislabel shame for empathy? because I'm thinking there were times when I would say something or do something and I could see the hurt on my partner's face.
Hmm.
And then I would think, how could I have done something like that to cause so much pain? And that feeling was crushing.
Yeah. How could I?
Could that have been shame and not what I thought of as empathy, being in their skin and understanding their pain?
Right. I mean,
Because I really
you're.
wanted it to stop.
Well, it's complicated. You could feel both. You could be both connected to their pain, which is empathy, and then connected to a sense of doing something wrong, which is your own. And the distinction here would be, do I feel guilt for doing something wrong? Or is this evidence of me being a bad person? And if there's a self-indictment, if this, oh, once again, I've hurt somebody, I'm a bad person, that's the shame, right? This is a character flaw. If it's, oh, I hurt you, I made a mistake, that's just guilt, which is, a healthier feeling for the most part.
Now, can this be one of the reasons the anxious attached has a hard time not reaching out to an avoidant attached partner when there is a breakup happening? When they sit there and they go through the past and start to think, well, maybe I did something wrong and I should reach out and try to, let them know that I've realized my mistake, which is something anxious attached tend to do. They want to reach out and fix something, a misunderstanding. Could
Sure.
shame be one of the things mixed with a little bit of empathy and maybe some guilt and remorse and realization, awareness? so
Not,
many,
not to
so
me.
many things at play here.
Maybe this is a bit cynical, but my outlook on that is if you are trying to fix something, typically because this is worth fixing and I don't want to abandon a good relationship, that's a moment of deep security where you are choosing a healthy way of approaching somebody and say, hey, let's not give up on this. There's something here, it's going to take some work, but we can fix this. However, if you're doing that to a relationship and that is deeply dysfunctional, in which you have no chance of actually fixing, it's not shame and recognition of your behavior that's guiding you. It's fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of losing this person. And that to me is what I come across more than anything. People all the time in my DMs are saying, thing is going on in my relationship. There's all this stuff going. How do I make it work? My response to them is, I'm sorry, why do you want to make it work? You've just told me why this relationship should end over and over again, and you want me to come along and help you make this work? Like, okay, if you have children, if you're financially dependent, if you have no choice, sure, I will work with you to help you tolerate what sounds like a deeply dysfunctional situation. But for the most part, please don't. Please do your own healing so you don't choose a person like this ever again.
Yes. Now, that brings me to another question. Choosing a person with a secure attached style. A lot of people will come to me or they will say on social media, avoid the avoidance.
Sure.
I know, and you're aware that this is so wired into us that even at an unconscious level, we keep choosing people of the same attachment over and over and over until we become secure enough to recognize that, okay, something doesn't feel right about this person. Let me not get into a relationship to figure that out. Let me just move on. What would your advice be to a person who thinks that it's just as easy as snapping a finger and staying away from an avoidant attached person or staying away from an anxious attached person?
Well, finding someone who is quote unquote secure is very difficult, probably because there aren't many people who are 100% secure. And if they are, they're probably choosing each other. Uh, and they're like, you're clinging, you are emotionally unavailable. No, thank you, because I know what it feels like to be loved properly, and you can't provide me that. So I'm gonna go find someone that is. So that's, I think, one of the reasons we always, and I kind of believe that to the degree that you are off center, off secure, that's kind of the person you will find. And the closer to secure you are, you'll probably find that balance in somebody, and that's how the healing starts. I tell people all the time, couples therapists also echo this. If you are too far away from center, too dysregulated, your insecure attachment is like has too much healing before, you probably should not be in a relationship. You need to be a little further in, typically, so that you can handle your own regulation, so that you are aware of your patterns of behavior, so that you can speak about your patterns of behavior. Can you do a lot of that in the context of a relationship? Of course. But if there's too much volatility and conflict, that will never happen. You're just putting out fire after fire. There's never going to be any healing. So you have to be in a relationship that is healthy enough so that healing can start. And a lot of healing can happen in the context of a relationship. But I would not say you need to avoid the avoidant. And to some degree, you might find greater healing with someone who's more avoidant, because the person you have to be to tolerate them is probably what you need to learn. You need to learn to regulate, and they're going to dysregulate you. You find a secure person, and they're, number one, probably going to leave because you're too dysregulated, but they're not going to help you do that work, maybe. Maybe they will, maybe they will, and that's great too. But the avoidant is going to trigger you, and those triggers tell you where your work is, and you can do that work with them. And as you both move closer to the center, it's this beautiful moment of look at what we've been through together. Sure, it costs time, money, and pain and tears. But I wouldn't avoid it. I think it's somewhat magical, somewhat mysterious about why we pick people. And then as you get more into
I agree. I think my partner was the best thing to have happened to me when it comes to healing my attachment style. And now it's like I ask him tons of questions like, how do you deal with this? And how is it you're calm about this? And how is it you handle all of these situations? But yeah, I've learned a lot of my healing happened through, looking at him. And he's incredibly insightful and aware of his feelings. And it's just getting to that point where he could feel safe to share,
Yep.
and that takes time and effort and work and patience and really becoming attuned. But it's been an incredible journey and learning. He's been one of my greatest teachers. And I tell him all the time, he's been one of my greatest teachers.
Well,
Yeah.
there's an area.
Go ahead.
There's an area of potential shame for you. You may have always seen yourself as someone easy to talk to and someone anyone can come to, and creating a sense of safety. And all of a sudden, this person that's your partner is like, excuse me, you don't. You, not for me, at least. And
Actually, he kind of said that. He's
yeah,
like, you're not perfect at relationships either,
yeah,
early on in the relationship. And I was like, you're right.
yeah.
But it's true. Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I think, very hard for the anxious attached to let in, because they believe they're connection in relationship focused. Therefore, they must be good at it. And truth is, they're as bad as the rest of us.
Oh,
No
yeah.
one's very good at it until they've done quite a bit of learning and self work. But it's harder for them to realize that than it is the avoidant who's been told their whole life, you suck at this. So they're like, yeah, okay, I admit that. So that's a place of shame, I think, for a lot of more anxiously attached people.
Well, thank you. This is good therapy. But yeah, thinking about it, yeah. And I think as I started to listen to him, when he brought up stuff about me, and it generally came about because I said something that made him feel criticized or judged. And then so he gets defensive and, back then would just throw something back at me. And I started to listen and I started to realize this guy was onto something, and that helped me to, process what he said and work on my healing as well. So it was really helpful. Now, one of the things a lot of people will ask is why is it the avoidant attached does not go to therapy? I know we both know many do, but what would be some of the things that prevents them or keeps them from going to therapy?
They are notoriously hard to engage in therapy. Partly because I think of the avoidance of shame. That's a big part of it. It means I have to look at myself, and I've been avoiding doing that for a long time. They are oftentimes decently successful people, right? In this world, the way we have it, if you can turn off and work hard and not feel a lot, you'll get a lot done. And so they're sort of looking at themselves and saying, well, Sure, I don't have a relationship, but the rest of my life's perfect. I have friends. I have a good job. I have money in the bank. So like, why? I don't need therapy. I rarely work with an avoidant who's say 30 and under. It happens, but it's not that common. And if they do come to therapy, it's not with the recognition, that they're an avoidant person. It's more like some other thing has brought them in, and as we talk about it, they're like, wow, I have never thought about any of these things. I don't let myself feel any of these things. But people like 40 and over who have been around the block a few times and are tired of feeling like, how come I keep leaving relationships? I have so many people who wanted to be with me, and we get close and then I leave and I think this isn't right, this isn't working, there's something wrong here, this should be easier. And now at 45 or whatever, I realize that's not true. I need help. So that's sort of, maybe it's hubris, I don't know what you want to call it. I would say defensiveness, that nothing's wrong with me due to, again, if I say there's something wrong with me, it becomes very all or nothing. Everything's wrong with me. It's all my fault. All these relationships have failed because of me. The defense against that makes it very hard to get them to just take a look at themselves.
Mm-hmm. Can it also be a little bit of maybe the the discomfort of having to go back to the past, drum up some negative experiences?
Yeah, I mean, more likely than not, when you hear someone say, "What's the point? What's the point of talking about my childhood? What's the point? It's painful, but why would that help me?" That's going to be someone who's more avoidant, right? They don't want to have to feel all those things.
And why do they tend to say to their partners, I had a perfect past? And then there are times when they say, talk about some things that might have happened that hurt them in their childhood, but then go right back to, no, I had a perfect past.
Oh yeah, the idealization of the childhood is pretty consistent, and there's a cultural piece there. I think there's a lot of cultures who find it incredibly offensive to speak ill about the people who provided for you, and again, you'll see this in like the sadness I think that I find here is parents will who haven't done the work of looking at their parents, recognizing the ways in which they provided but also deeply let them down, will then recreate a similar pattern in which they say, well, look, I'm providing, what's your problem? And are deeply letting down their children, and then will again come to me and go, not only do I have no romantic partnership, but my children hate me and I don't know why. And we break it down. They're emotionally disconnected from their children. They were emotionally disconnected from their own parents and have had this superficial relationship based on transactions that they think is a relationship, and is obviously not.
Mm-hmm. When we're talking about providers, we generally think, or we have this belief that men are more avoidantly attached than women are. You find men are. Mm-hmm. I personally know a lot of female avoidant attached persons. Can you clear up why culture would think that this is more of a man thing or society?
I think there is some, I think the book Attached also says that it's about 60-40, men versus women. And again, I think it's impossible to understand because of the layers, right? So we're talking about layer number one, biology. And I think maybe evolutionarily it makes sense that you would have more men who are more slightly avoidant leaning so that they can go out and hunt and do their thing and not be so preoccupied by their family the whole time. Sure, okay, I buy that. Then you have the way society treats, like men feeling shame versus women feeling shame, right? Like we're not allowed to feel that thing. So then you have this layer of slightly avoidant men who maybe would have been more secure, but now we've told them that they are not meeting the standards of manliness, and so they feel a sense of shame there. And then you put them in a relationship, and then their partner is like, "Here are all the ways you let me down," so they feel even more. The reaction to the world to sort of go inwards and to be solitary, as we have seen from the statistics for men, is growing and growing. They are isolating more. They are choosing video games and substances over relationships more and more because they have the money and they have the playtime, and that's good enough for them. And I think I think we are creating more avoidance in our culture at the moment. Um, that's not great. It's not good because at the end of the day, if you really want to be alone, cool, do, whatever. But I just don't think you do. I think what you want to do is not have to deal with the discomfort of being bad at relationships for a little while till you get good at them.
And we also want to embrace the importance of having connections, but also enjoying that our alone time. And a lot of people don't like the idea of someone taking alone time, and I feel like it's so, so necessary, especially in this fast-paced world that we're in. It is so necessary for everyone to take some alone time. What advice would you give to an avoidant who wants to start on their healing journey, but they just don't know where to start?
So it's pretty difficult for someone to do this on their own, but if you need to do it on your own, the place to start is regulation. Look at the ways you avoid certain things and learn to regulate around difficult feelings. Notice your isolative behaviors. Notice the ways that you respond to the world by saying, well, I'm just going to check out of that. I'm going to back out. I'm going to cut that off. Right? Those are all indications that you need to actually work into those things. You need to figure out how to tolerate when your friend lets you down, not cut people off. You need to figure out how to be with all those feelings that you find intolerable, not just avoid situations that cause them. You can do that work on yourself and learn to regulate in those moments. So don't turn to substances, don't escape too much, don't isolate too much. If you can do that, you might be ready for a relationship. If you can't do that on your own, you need to find someone who's going to help create the safety and soothing for you so that you can be in a relationship to someone, access that part of yourself, and then in a room with someone, help start to lower those defense mechanisms. Those are all defenses, right? Those are such strong defenses, they feel like they're a part of you. They feel like who you are. They feel like your identity. They're not. They're keeping you from accessing your core identity, your authenticity, who you really are. Once they start to diminish, there's a aliveness that will come out of you that you didn't know you had. And again, you can have someone help walk you through that, and I see it all the time. Someone all of a sudden is just this version of themselves that is a little more engaged with the world, a little less afraid of what might happen if they make a mistake, a little more involved with themselves, knows what they want and need and is getting it. And they're like, oh my God, this is what living feels like. I had no idea.
Yeah, and I think it goes the same way for an anxious attached person. The moment you're no longer afraid that people will leave you, you really start to sit with them and enjoy them because you know it's okay to be alone as well. And you start to see the world, you start to see Earth so differently.
Yeah.
It's like it's such a beautiful place when you could enjoy people and enjoy your time alone. So this works the same way for an anxious attached person. Now that I could talk to you forever. I've said this so many times. We could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
I would love to have you back and continue along on this line if we can.
Of course.
Yeah. Is there anything interesting, fun that you want to share with our viewers, listeners, and what's going on in your life? What are you planning, projects?
I'm still, I launched several months ago. I launched an attachment-based program. It is blowing my mind at the results I'm getting with people. People who have been avoidant for decades are opening up to their partners in a way that I, had always hoped but didn't expect. People who are anxiously attached are connecting with people and going, oh wow. I don't have relationships because of my dysregulation. Now that I can regulate, I can handle a deeper connection. And it's just a joy to be a part of people's healing journey. And I put this program together, hoping it would do this, not knowing, and it's doing it. And I'm ecstatic. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It is so incredibly important. Like I've said to you before, I remember the pain of being in an anxious, attached style body, and man, was it excruciating. So it's good to know that there's help. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing again, and thank you for always being available to have these chats with me.
Thank you so much.